So, vom anders bauen kommen wir nun zum weniger bauen. Und hier freue ich mich ganz besonders auf unsere nächste Rednerin. Und ich muss jetzt auf Englisch umswitchen, weil der Vortrag auf Englisch stattfinden wird und auch die nächste halbe Stunde, die nächste Dreiviertelstunde. So, I will now switch to English. And I am very pleased and honored that Anne Lacaton is our guest tonight. Andreas Hofer ist auch schon da, sehr gut. Er kommt dann nachher auch noch auf die Bühne. I'm very pleased that you are our guest tonight, this evening. And I will introduce you some words. Anne Lacaton, together with your partner Jean-Philippe Vassal, are pioneers of rebuilding, existing building and sufficiency in architecture. You stand for the principle of rebuilding instead of demolition, long before we all had to deal with it. In a way, you stand for an anti-star architecture, for me, a kind of refusal attitude that can be radical, but also quite appropriate and modest. You always manage minimally invasive to create more space, more light, more flexibility, more freedom, with lower costs and low tech. And it's about the respectful and appreciative treatment of the environment, the place, the building, the people, the social and the ethical component. It's the big S in ESG. Don't forget it, the social component. For their commitment, their works and their projects like Maison La Tapie, Place Léon Coq, Palais de Tokyo, and so on, FRAC, Dunkirk, Lacaton Vassal were awarded, among others, with Großer BDA-Preis 2020 and the Pritzker Prize 2021. So thanks for being here. Welcome on stage, Anne Lacaton. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm very pleased to be here in Stuttgart. It's not my first time here. I already gave some lectures and I've still some professors I know in the university. And today, in line with your topic, I propose to talk about the value of the existing. So the existing offers a lot of buildings, of architectures, of infrastructures, of landscapes. In general, we do not take care enough to the existing. We do not pay enough attention to the existing, of course, except the historical buildings. In general, the existing, the already there, is basically considered as out of date, obsolete. It's often admitted without too solid arguments of accurate investigations that the existing doesn't no longer meets the needs, no longer offer enough quality, and do not comply anymore with the latest norms and standards. What today is a little too fast considered to be a redibitory defect. So the existing offers a lot of material that can be used in a very efficient and creative way to reduce drastically the need of using new materials to build or reduce the material that we need, to reduce the need of always using new territories to build out of the cities. In this approach, instead of demolishing or replacing or strongly reshaping, we always prefer the strategy of transformation. Considering the value of the existing means make with, revive, transform. It means to use everything of the existing, transform when it's necessary, or sometimes doing nothing or almost nothing when the existing already offers enough. This is a fundamental pillar of sustainable approach. Most of what exists still has a lifespan that can be prolonged, updated, upgraded with accuracy, precision, to last still a much longer time. And this is an issue of observation, of inventory, of taking care very close and very carefully to what is already there. Our strategy is to add, to join, to span existing structure, to superimpose structure, spaces and uses, with a principle of losing nothing and a resolute goal to reuse 100% of what is already there. The existing situation provides the preliminary structure and the material of all our projects. Make with the existing means with people, with nature, with climate, with buildings, with infrastructures, with economy, intelligence, precision, to invent or to reinvent with what we already have in hands, to transform with a minimum material, to do more with less. So making with is for a very long time our design approach. And I must say that probably it's not something that we have learned at school. It's probably something that we learned a lot in Africa, when we had the opportunity, after studying architecture in France, to spend rather long time there. And what at the beginning appeared to us as a lack of means, a lack of tools, suddenly appeared as a strategy of doing with what is available. So, and it was a great lesson for us that in a way we added with what we have learned before. It was not a relearning, but an addition and a mix of understanding. Making with nature, with trees, with soils, with flowers, animals. It was the topic of this house that we had to do in France on the side of the sea in the southwest. It was a house for friends, for a holiday house. And the first question was, the plot was really fantastic. A forest on the sand dune, a very fragile situation. And very, very often when houses are built, before they are cutting trees, and there is a clearing which is made, and the house is made after flattening the ground in the middle of this clearing. And for us, it was at the beginning a very big concern. Is it a good thing to build there, or should we refuse to build? But finally, step by step, we arrived to the idea that we should try to install something in this landscape without damaging. And our great concern was that the situation after should not be worse than before. So we proposed to build a house with light material. That was in 1995, so already 30 years ago. So we proposed to build a house without cutting any trees, a house elevated from the ground, which could allow to have very, very thin foundation, like needles, without any ground connection, to keep the dune, the sand dune, without any strong works. To build with small steel elements that could be brought on the side by two people and not need of a big truck. And the construction was built around the trees, not in the way of scenographing or staging the trees, but just taking care that they are there for still a while, and that we should cohabitate with the trees. So we knew that these trees were old, 80 years, when we did the construction, and we knew that probably some of them will not live longer than the house. But it was important also to consider that the house could be deconstructed, but the forest will still stay there. So the house is elevated at 3 to 4 meters high, and it's a simple construction that is also very not made in function of the trees, but try to integrate into the trees. And what is also interesting that the plot is so expensive, the land is so expensive on this place that the cost of the house is something like 20% of the cost of the land. So it's really give finally the good place to the architecture. Architecture is not so important at this place. So the trees are inside, in the middle of the corridor where they were. And the inside, it's a mix of landscape architecture, but where the landscape still dominates. Making with value of the place, that was also the question in this little square in the city of Bordeaux. It's a project that we did in '96. We were involved by the city as a few number of other architects to work on a number of squares in the city. That the city has a project of which was called embellishment of the squares of the city. And they did the first place as an example where it was new pavement, new design of benches, new furniture, new lamps. And they gave this as an example that all the squares could be embellished in that way. So the square was not really in the city center. It was a very quiet neighborhood behind the station, the train station. And ourselves, we have not been there, never. So we took the time to go there. We have 4 months to do this project and to come back to the city to give the project. And we went there a few times. And we tried to observe how it was living, the quality of architecture, what was not working. And immediately we felt a lot of qualities on this place. And finally, 4 months later, we went to the commission and we said, at the question of embellishing the square, we say the square is already beautiful. And we explained the reason why we found the square beautiful. And we say there are probably a little actions to do, like cleaning the ground more often, because it's not in the city center, so sometimes it's not very clean, or to change the sense of the circulation, because some cross were dangerous. And after explaining that, we said, after this analysis, our project is to do nothing. Also an old project, but finally it's interesting now to see again this project, because it was probably one of the very former projects of where we were facing really this issue of transformation of the existing. It's an old neighborhood in the city in the west of France on the Atlantic Ocean, Saint-Nazaire, and the name of this little neighborhood is named Little Morocco, because it's connected with a big shipyard, and at the time there was a connection of boats between this town and Casablanca. And the drivers of the big boats, they were all living there. I don't know why, but it turned, and they were bringing back food or carpets or something. So it's why it was named Little Morocco. So this is social housing. So it was the ownership of the social housing company of the city. And we were selected for a competition for this site. Very well located. And the brief of the competition was to replace all these houses, 36 dwellings in these blocks, by 55 new dwellings. And the arguments were, we cannot do anything with this because they are too old, they don't comply with the new comfort regulations, with energy saving, and so on and so on. And the best is to remove them and to replace. But the people living there really were struggling because they didn't want to leave this space. And also the second contradiction that was in the contradiction that was in the brief is that they gave us a big package of pictures like this one to underline the charm of the place. And they say we want 55 new dwellings with the same charm as it is today. So how is it possible in the same sentence to say you demolish everything, but we want something, while such a charm takes 50 years to be there? So it became a big problem because we knew that somebody asked a question, is it mandatory to demolish? And it was a stupid question because they replied yes. So then we couldn't use the argument, okay, it was not so clear. But anyway, we decided not to follow the brief, and we decided to keep the building and to say we can do something with that. And the issue of densification can be also considered, because there were, for example, a place with a parking lot, not so much used, so there was a place to densify the site. So, and we understand why people were so happy to live there, and we then see which reason could allow us to say, no, you should go, because we have to replace all of this. And we propose this is kind of project with, in red, it's the existing. In the lowest red buildings, we transform in houses to improve the typology, to make larger apartments. The yellow in front, the red, it's an extension of the existing to transform the housing, but also to go higher, to add new housing. And the yellow is a new building at the place of the parking lot. So the addition was to create these new buildings, but they were not alone, they were integrated in or added to new constructions. So, and that was the opportunity also, and we proposed that already at the time to do this extension without removing any family. So the extension could be made, and then it's a new space that is in front, but keeping the qualities of the already there. Extension. So, and that was the proposal. They were really interested by the proposal, but because the brief said that the demolition should be made, they couldn't accept this project, so they decided to cancel the competition and to make a second one. We couldn't participate to the second, and now this little Morocco is not existing anymore. So, but that was an interesting experience, and that was also the opportunity finally to start a discussion with the owner. And 5 or 6 years later, we were involved in a project of transformation of a small tower, but it cannot be so satisfying because what is lost, and you cannot find it. So for us, it's also something that after so many years of working on this issue, to see that things are not going on. It's so slow, there is no decision, and we never understand why it's so slow, why we cannot do things right now, and why we should wait even more. So another kind of topics is about the abandoned buildings. We saw today in one presentation this grain seeds silo. There are everywhere a lot of buildings that have not anymore use. So it's interesting to see how to reuse and to re-give life and not demolish because they, in a first approach, we didn't see what to do with it. So here it was not an industrial building, it was a museum, Palais Tokyo, which was built in the center of Paris. in 1937, and this was made for a museum and not as a pavilion of exhibition. But at the beginning it was a National Modern Art Museum that in 30 years later moved to the Centre Pompidou, and there was different museums here, photography, cinema, and so on, until the state decided the big refurbishment. So they did a competition and they started the project in the early 90s. And suddenly, after a few months of construction, difficult to know why, but that was the former museum when it was built. Very interesting situation because from outside, it's a very conventional architecture, but it was built so fast that inside, in fact, it was made by very young architects and engineers, and the construction inside was absolutely different. It was made like a supermarket with huge structures, with a very, very big opposition between what you see outside and what it was inside. So suddenly, the government decided to stop this project of transformation. And this was a museum, and this became, after the 1 year of construction works, this kind of ruin led a few years without nothing inside, really in the center of Paris, facing the Eiffel Tower, with water falling inside, with no more elevators, a lot of things broken, a great fragility of the structures because the walls have been broken. And probably somebody said, oh, it's a pity to let this place close with nothing. And they decided to put there a very little project, which was a temporary project of Center for Young Creation, with a budget of 3 million. 3 million, the building is 26,000 square meters. So, and they launched a competition. So we applied, we were selected for this first phase, and in fact it was a special competition because they didn't ask to make a project. We made a visit, and they say to the 3 teams, you should come back in 1 week and say what you propose to do for this temporary installation. And the fact that it was so little money and the temporary installation made that finally the Ministry of Culture didn't took so much interest of it. So after 1 week, we came again, and we just gave a text, and we say, in fact, here the architecture is already there and is already fantastic, but the building has some damages. So we propose to use 3 million to reinforce structures, to reinstall some elevators, some broken stairs, and we say probably electricity, reconnect heating, and we said probably after this we will have spent the 3 million, but it will be enough to reopen the doors and to let again artists and the public enter, not on all the surface, but we will see how much we can see. And they said, okay, let's do that. And in fact, when they say let's do that, it's because they were absolutely sure that it would fail and that we would not arrive to do it. So the first thing is because they were here only 4% inside, the future directors of this contemporary art center, and they proposed to us to come because you can imagine that there was absolutely no plans of the existing situation. So everything should be made on site. Take notes on papers, photos, and notes. So that was, at the same time, fascinating, at the same time funny, and at the same time very, very stressing. But in fact, nobody took care of us for 1.5 years. So sometimes somebody came, where is the project? Can you show something? Okay, we come back later. And one day, we were finished, and they were forced to open the door. So the thing, it's not so easy because, of course, there was the fireman, the commission, and so on, but finally we did it. And in fact, the goal was to say, what is the minimum that we can do that allows to place again the building in a positive situation, that it restarts to be a good building with not anymore holes in the ground, not anymore weak columns, and then it's probably enough to reopen for artist exhibition. And we did it, and it was a big success. It was supposed to be for 5 years, because the state has still in mind that they would like to make a huge refurbishment, but 5 years later they didn't have the money, and they decided to continue the temporary, another period of time with another budget, and we continued repairing the broken roofs and so on. And with a second budget of 13 million, finally we arrived to reopen the 26 square meters. But in fact, it's this issue of temporary is something very interesting, because it does not engage the same things. Because the temporary, finally, is probably sometimes you can explain that you can avoid some normatives because it's not forever. And but the fire security, people security, there is no discussion, but it's not the most difficult. But in fact, probably it's an issue to think, not to think buildings in terms of 50 years, but how we can deal with this idea of permanence and temporality, and probably it's something very interesting in now to think differently the design of the building. So just some pictures of, and now it's we finished the second phase in 2010, and it's still there, and now nobody thinks to close it. So another project also, which is also very interesting, it's about this building in the north of France, Dunkirk. This building is the only one remaining from a very big shipyard that was totally dismantled in the early 80s. And they just kept this building that you see in front because the people of the city and the former workers, they really struggled to keep something from this heritage. And this building, in fact, was the only one. It was a very specific one because it was the place where they assembled the final pieces of a boat before the boat were going to the sea. So there was a special symbol on this place. And now that was a place after dismantling. And it's always strange when it's decided to have a so strong action of dismantling a place and to ask the only one remaining building to play the role of memory. There is something totally absurd to do it. And in fact, finally they decided to place inside the Contemporary Art Center. So it was requested in the competition to fill this space with floors for storage with very controlled conditions of temperature, humidity, and also to organize some exhibition space. So which immediately would have totally transformed the existing, because it would have been necessary to insulate, to change all probably the glasses and so on. And also when they opened the door and that we had this shock of this big void, we had very fast the intuition that it was a mistake to fill this void, and that the void was more interesting than a filled building. So we turned around during the competition, and finally we returned to our intuition, and we proposed not to build inside. Sorry. So this is a building, but to make a twin. and to make a twin with as a new building, with all the conditions requested for this kind of building, and to keep the void empty, connected also as an extra exhibition space or an extra event space, so it could be kept in its situation without heating, without just power, electricity, and fire security, and the new building on the side that could fill all the conditions. So we didn't do many works inside because, of course, we proposed to do all of this without spending more money than the budget. And the new building is made with, in fact, with a double envelope, because, in fact, to have such control conditions mean that it's a big equipment for maintaining a temperature inside. So the double envelope helps, like buffer zone, to create good conditions from between outside and inside, and to prepare a climate and reduce the need of heating or freezing the existing building. So, and it's also the new building, the second envelope, has exactly the same shape of the former one, and that was an idea of not demonstrating or not being lower, but just exactly the same. And this is the upper part of the reserves, and it's a kind of given space because it takes profits of this second skin. So this place is not heated, it's just heated by the sun. We have a system of shading that can be open. So the climatic conditions are variable inside, but it's also a quality because it offers a different space from the very conventional exhibition space where the conditions are always the same. And they use it a lot for exhibitions. And it creates also this very interesting also connection and views, because the new building is divided in 4 levels, while the void is kept full. So another situation, most recent in Zurich, in Switzerland, again, make with the existing as an opportunity, reuse instead of demolishing and rebuilding, transform, extend, densify. Here again, it was an issue of densification. This is the only little part remaining of a big factory in Zurich. All around it has been demolished and replaced by a very conventional master plan with blocks of housing, and only this little one was remaining, and it has been reused, not refurbished, but reused in a concert hall, but for very familiar concerts. They hosted Philharmony for a while, but it's much more like singers or. And the yellow building is heritage. It was the head office of the factory. But in the competition, the brief was to densify this space, to make something like 120 or 150 new dwellings, and also to destroy this place, but to find again some places for culture and for concert. But there was a little opening, a little door open that said, but if you have another option, you can also propose another option. So, and for us it was, of course, clear that we didn't want to, it's much more interesting, in fact, to work with an existing and to try to deal with an existing situation instead of starting from a very flat and empty space. So, it's much more challenging, but much more exciting. So for this project, we propose to reuse the existing that can be still used, no demolition. The existing building could be conserved and renovated and become like an urban soccer, plinth. Then we propose to make an addition above of the existing superposition of these new blocks for creating the housing, and they were built on the part of the building which was not currently used, or on the side of the building which is not built today. To create the new programs, I mean the housing. So, and that was this superimposition, that kind of grab of a new construction, it's a blue one, to create this new ensemble with flats, take the opportunity to reuse also this, the roof of the factory, which was very heavy because inside there were big cranes, to make a garden with greenhouses, to renovate the others, but also that could be done without emptying the place, and that the concert could be continue on the place. And at the end, we, with this project, we could propose 11,500 square meters of new construction for offices and 165 new flats, which was the expectation of the brief. So this is the rendering. It's still a rendering because we didn't win the competition. And one thing which is very strange, it's in fact, because the master plan of the city was made in the perspective of demolishing the building, there were new rules for the implementation of the new buildings. But this new line was behind the current wall of the existing. And they considered that the project was out of rule because we were not respecting the plot, the line of a future plot that would never exist. But that was an interesting, very interesting project. And of course, it's, you know, it's never lost, even when you lose a situation. When we lose a competition, you always win something, which is for the next time. That's, and the last part of the presentation is a very important topic on which we work since more than 20 years. It's about the transformation of the housing blocks to upgrade quality, extend living space. In fact, all these housing blocks, very often social housing that has been built in the suburbs of cities in the 60s, 70s, at the time they were representing a kind of utopia of a new way of life. But finally, after some years, because it didn't go to the end, the transport was not made enough, not enough equipment. So the mix of population of people living there was lost because a lot of people, they moved to other neighborhoods because the promise was not done. So it has become in many parts places which are a little apart the city, most often rejected or considered as the worst place to live. So, and after the utopia of the 60s came the disenchantment until the critical situation that we know today, and especially in France, there are a lot of these neighborhoods around the cities. And in many countries, and in France again, the demolition appears as the solution to do something on these places. And in 2000, since 2000 in France, there was a very big program of urban renovation, which was based on the demolition of 200,000 apartments that should have been replaced by the same amount of new apartments. But the results up to date now is that the 200,000 has been demolished, but only 150,000 has been rebuilt for a cost of something like 20 or 25 billions. So it means that in a situation where there is a lack of housing, because the demand is higher than the production of housing. This is something that appears to us difficult to understand. So at the time, we decided with a friend to study very carefully, in 2000, to study very carefully the situation with the ideas that the demolition is a huge waste, economical, ecological, social, and we tried to study this issue of transformation, which is based on two main ideas, two main positions. The one is this one, that demolition is a huge waste, economical, and so on. And the second is the topic about the quality of housing. Because quality of housing, the quality, we cannot just think sustainability or efficiency in terms of materials. It's also in terms of quality of living, in a social life. And it's also probably a good balance to find between the efficiency and the quality of living. So transforming existing housing is not just upgrading the buildings to a good quality, a good energy efficiency, or solve technical problems. It should be also the opportunity to provide with a better quality of housing. So the second position in favor of transformation is first against demolition, and second about quality of inhabiting, generosity of space, give freedom of use, light, comfort, view, and finally provide with pleasure and luxury for all, because pleasure and luxury is also part of sustainability. So, and for us, it's this image that we have in mind that, and also for doing new housing, that every dwelling should have the same facility as a villa, and it should not be an issue of cost. It's just a way how to do project and how to do construction. So all places have a value that can be revealed and developed, and the transformation of the existing housing is very clearly the opportunity to upgrade massively the quality of all housing with less money and in a more sustainable way, because it's very difficult to understand why when we build new today, it must be the highest requirements, why there is a so big stock of existing housing where it's not the same involvement which is proposed to renovate this. And it creates a big gap between, and the stock is enormous. So it's very important to think about this issue of transformation at the same level of the quality of the new. So transformation makes it possible to be more generous, to give more space to each inhabitant, to produce good and affordable living conditions, no longer determined by the economic, regulatory, or normative minimum, but by the maximum generosity and sustainability. So when we studied this transformation versus demolition, we arrived to these numbers, to this comparison of numbers. In France, for what I explained before, the cost per dwelling, demolished and rebuilt, is between 165,000 to 200,000, while the project of transformation without demolition, in different cases that we studied, different structures, different states, we arrived to an average of 55,000 per dwelling, which means that for one dwelling, one replaced by one, which is still one, you can do 3 or 4 renovated apartments. So in itself, it should be enough to encourage the transformation, but in the reality, it's not like that. So just, sorry, why is it matching? Wow. So it's in 2000 we started to work on this research. Again, it was compared to the national program of renovation, and we named it Plus, which is doing plus in the transformation. So, and we started with a very strong principle to make this research, which was never demolish, never subtract, remove or replace, always add, transform and utilize with and for inhabitants. So, and in studying a lot of these blocks, in fact, it's very clear that at the time there was so big amounts of construction that it was very fast built. The logic of the master plan was very often the efficiency of the construction site. In fact, they were playing with blocks without thinking that one block might be 500 or 200 dwellings with people living inside. So there was, at the time, the effort of thinking to the living space was not done in many spaces, neither, of course, of the comfort. But taking some examples, we could see that in doing some simple interventions, we could transform these places into much better quality of housing. And most of the time, it's possible because the structure are not always on the facade. We have inside structure, so it's rather possible in many times. So from inside, from this very small window, while very often you have in front nothing, just a large landscape, opening the wall, transforming with a large sliding door, and the balcony in front, and you change the situation. So from this study in 2000, it was rather difficult to start to do the first applications. So we did the first building in Paris in 2000, finished in 2000, and then we were involved in this project in Bordeaux on these 3 blocks, 530 dwellings that the city has planned to demolish and rebuild by the same number of. So in Bordeaux, it's a neighborhood built in the 60s of 4,000 dwellings, which is very prominent because the city is very low, and this place has 15 levels or sometimes 20. So, and that was a neighborhood, but today it's totally integrated in the city, and it's it's a good neighborhood with all the public transports, all the equipments, and even more, it has been integrated in the perimeter of the UNESCO protection as modern architecture. So it helped to convince the mayor not to demolish. And we were involved in the competition, and we won the competition, and we said that we would propose a transformation of these blocks, but it's not about the shape. It's not about transforming a slab into 3 blocks or cutting one piece. It's just about what is the quality of living inside and what should we improve to transform for a long time this building. So we propose to do this transformation by the living space and transformation without removing the 530 families. So what is very important in this strategy is to never stay outside, like from this point of view. Because if you stay there, everybody say, oh, it's very ugly, there is absolutely no quality, so it should be removed, transformed, not transformed, removed and replaced by something much better. What is very important is to go inside. And when you go inside, you see something very different. You see 530 different situations that the inhabitants have made in the majority very nice. They have given inside the qualities that you don't see outside by care to the interior decoration, a lot of collection. You cannot imagine what people are able to collect. Amazing. It's a number of little museums. It's absolutely amazing. And in fact, when you have visited, probably not the 530 the same day, but after a number of visits, we confirm our conviction that we should do the transformation, but with a lot of care with the existing, without touching all this. It's fine. I'm almost finished. So, but this is very important in terms of strategy. So just some picture of these interiors. And it's why finally we propose for the transformation not to touch inside, just to do some works of renovation, renovating the bathrooms, electricity, but in fact, no structural works, no change in typology, no openings in the walls, but to give this what is missing by addition. And from this piece of one of the big block, the process is to add in front a new space, a kind of module of 4 meters, and to take this opportunity to transform the windows in glass doors, to replace this by good facade, to make the better comfort inside, then to have a second layer, second facade outside. And in fact, it is the strategy of a space as making the comfort, the insulation, summer and winter in being closed because it takes the sun, and it's like immediately you have a good temperature inside, and summer everything is closed and it makes shadows on the glass facade, so we avoid the overheat. So, and this space is also used for the everyday life. So at the moment of the design, it's also very important to think to the methodology of works, because we knew that we were involving all these people inside, and it should not be so much disturbing. And this was the proposal for the apartment after transformation, with inside some renovation, but that was not so much disturbing, and also replacing all the elevators, so a number of community space were renovated, and we propose to do this extension at every level for every apartment to give the same condition. We did a prototype so that people could visit, and the prototype became also the place for the exhibition and the communication of the project during all the process. Then there was also, it's important also to have this process of giving a lot of information to people, being very close, explaining, and there was this guide that was made for the inhabitants to explain the project, but also to explain the process of construction, but also a number of phones, names, emails, so they can ask help anytime if it was needed. So besides, there was also a discussion with the tenants, between the owner and the tenants, a social housing company, and it was finally proposed that there will not be any increase of the rent after the transformation, because the owner considered that it was his job to maintain and to give better efficiency to the building. So then the process of works started with these modules, which were built 2 kilometers away and brought on track. You see the preliminary, the columns and the foundations, because it's not supported by the existing building. And then the process of placing the modules, something like 7 days, and then they prepare the next level, just making attachment to the existing for the wind, the series of columns, the floors, and so on. And when we had a number of levels secure enough, we started the process of opening the facade. Until now, there is absolutely no disturbance with inside. When the process of opening starts, there it becomes more difficult, but the commitment was to make the replacement of the facade in 2 days maximum. So the first day was the opening. with asbestos in the windows and some specific conditions. And the second day, the frame arrived with new glass facade, insulated glass. So when doing this, this winter garden, the new glass, we didn't insulate the existing facade because the space acts as an insulation. And some weeks later, the inhabitant can take the use of the space. So this process of just making a temporary partition for the dust. From inside, you can continue staying. And step by step, after 2 days, there is a new glass window, and there is just the finishes around the door to do, and the transformation. Just here, you can see also this the yellow curtain, which is very important because it's a thermal curtain that allows to justify also these large glass windows, because in winter you close it and it's very efficient. And here it's a light curtain, which is a shading, and all these two partitions plus the two curtains manipulated by the inhabitant. Nothing is automatical. You can play with these 4 layers and define the better comfort according to the seasons. So, and transformation before, after. A new space, rather large, with no specific function, but which is appropriate by inhabitants according to their wishes, very often very fast. So this transformation. So, and this process from inside finally creates a radical change, a transformation in the building. So we added also, as we could see before, additional houses on the roof to create some large typologies that were not existing in the block, with very light construction because we couldn't build heavy. But it's absolutely exceptional conditions, rented at a very good price, and the transformation after. And now it's a place which is not anymore rejected, but everyone would like to rent an apartment there. And just I finish with a very few numbers to see the efficiency of this. So 100% existing conserved. We added 53% of surface just by doing this extension, but also better regulation, cleaning of the existing heating, so some also basic interventions. We could divide by 3 the primary energy consumption, and it was in the category of low energy building. The transformation compared to demolition rebuild save 50% of the carbon footprint, because demolition creates a big waste. So the building was occupied during the construction works, no increase of rent, and the cost of this transformation for the works was 52,000 euros, where the estimation of demolition and rebuild was 160,000. So just to say that transformation is much more beneficial than demolition and rebuild. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne Lacaton. Thank you very much. Please stay on the stage. Very inspiring projects, and we'll come to a final conclusion, to a final discussion. We run out of time, sorry, but I will welcome Andreas Hofer. Begrüßen Sie mit mir Andreas Hofer, Geschäftsführer und Intendant der ihrer 27. Wir werden jetzt einige Aspekte noch kurz vertiefen. So we will switch to English again. Bitte schön. Ich gebe ja auch mal eins, dann. Sorry.
pour cette présentation émouvante.
Thank you very much.
Vraiment
Merci.
humaine.
Merci beaucoup.
Come here, please. Okay. So, in Germany, we have a housing crisis, which is also a redistribution crisis. Some say so. People live in more and more space, while fewer and fewer apartments are built or converted. So, and every 6 minutes we lose a social housing unit in Germany. So, what is the situation in France? And can you give both to us your strategies, your ideas, some solutions?
Unfortunately, it's the same in France. And in France, we had the tradition of social housing, which was very strong, with a lot of rented social housing. But since a few decades, as in many countries, finally it has decided that social housing was not, the social housing companies were not the best people to build, and they were invited to stay as just managing or renting the space, and the market was given to the private developers who are not doing at all the same thing. And afterwards, the social housing companies, they buy housing to the private market, more expensive and smaller apartments, because the private market, in a way, tends to go to the minimum, to transform, in fact, the minimum into the maximum. So, unfortunately, it's a tendency which is probably the same in many countries.
Andreas?
Since 1 year, the economic situation in housing is completely changed in Germany. So the conventional way doesn't work anymore. It's too expensive. Many projects are stopped at the moment. We have the ecological crisis also. Do you think that your concepts are now seen from outside as a completely other alternative that perhaps will also help us to overcome this real estate crisis we face at the moment?
I would be happy. No, I think it's you know, these projects, it's a very long time that we develop this project, and we are invited in many places, many seminars to explain, but in general there is nothing after, no effects, not only for us, but for also all the architects that can do also this. So it means that probably there is, for me, it's much more. It's not so much an issue of economy. It's much more an issue of a lack of a political vision regarding the housing that now has disappeared since years and years. I think that, for example, in the 60s, 70s, even if they didn't do very good construction, but there was a very strong vision to say everybody should have a good housing, affordable housing, and that was here and there in many countries a great effort to it. And today it's missing. It should be again said, not just we should reach the best requirement, no energy building, produce energy for the others. Of course it's important, but before that there is also this issue that the housing is the most important thing for everybody, and it should be said very clearly at every levels of the politics that it's the main cause.
Perhaps less standards and regulations could be the solution. We have in Germany building type E, Gebäudetyp E, E like easy, E like experimental, is designed to make construction faster, cheaper, more efficient. To you, is this a solution to help us to build quickly, but also in high quality?
I think it's never a matter to oppose quality, economy, and never. Because you could do good quality with less money. I would say that probably today, the permanent accumulation of new norms complicates a lot everything. And we cannot say from probably all our experience that the norms is not always a guarantee of better quality. So it's why we should return to probably more intelligence, more good sense, to do things in the best way, probably more simple, but probably we will force to go to it.
So, Andreas, less regulations, less approval.
It's even worse.
Yeah.
The look on this huge grand ensemble of the 60s and the 70s here is kind of a killer argument against social responsibility. So it's an escape in this small, tiny scale that is very expensive. Yeah. They take it as an argument against being social. I also be convinced that the 60s and the 70s were the last moments when our big democracies really took the social responsibility. Yeah. Yeah. And this is also an architectonic problem. If you put up these images of now we have it in the banlieues also at the moment. The struggles that are going on in France in the last weeks, which are completely melted to this image of the settlement.
Yeah. No, but I think probably the problem you say that the model of the 60s remains, as you say, an argument to kill social housing. The problem is that the critique of the modernism was badly made. It was a critique of architecture, of principles, while it should have been a critique of what was good and what has failed, and what we should keep and what we should change. So, but in fact, now we pay this very bad critique of the modernism, since it's not recent. And it's very difficult to think again about collectivity, about immediately collective housing appears as a problem when we don't see why it should be a problem. And it's also the only way to save also the natural ground everywhere, so we have also to think to it. So the problem is not to live in a big block or in a tower. The problem is how you live inside and what the city offers to you as conditions of life.
Okay, I think we run out of time. I've got the signals. Perhaps
I have one good message for you.
Yeah.
You have shown us the Mark project. Yesterday, 2 citizen groups opposed to the building permission. Yesterday, you have heard? Yeah. So they will not be able to demolish.
Yeah, good.
Okay, great. So, thank you very much, Anne Lacaton, Andreas Hofer. I'm so sorry, I have a lot of questions, but we run out of time. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We go in the garden.
Okay, Mikrofone. Yeah. Thank you.